The world was a blur of crimson. "You're finally here, my son," the clan head rasped, his voice a low growl. The words hung heavy, a declaration more than a greeting, as he stood, an imposing figure with a great sword at his side. This was the beginning of it all. It felt like a challenge hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Theo, the young man, found his breath coming in ragged pants. It was a struggle for him, this climb, every breath a reminder of how weary he was. He looked towards the ground. The pressure had been immense. A lone tear trailing down his cheek, his face contorted in a grimace of exertion. A dizzying vortex of red aura filled the air, a swirling tempest. Theo had expected it to take him only an hour, but it had taken 4. Theo thought, "It took me 4 hours to climb what should normally take only 1. He noted internally, his body trembling. What a suffocating pressure. He murmured. The world pulsed with a strange, malevolent energy. The ground was littered with swords, a grim testimony of those who had come before. A vast expanse of weapons jutted from the ground like fallen tombstones, surrounded by a haze of crimson. "Do you know what all this is?" Kyle's voice echoed in the empty space. Theo had heard stories, but seeing it was different. "This place is the graveyard of broken swords." He spoke the words as if they were a bitter truth, his voice tinged with a somber realization. He continued, "I've been told that they're the swords of those you've defeated, my lord." He stated, trying to keep the tremble out of his voice, a tremor running through his bones at the sheer magnitude of the scene. Kyle's voice was harsh, sharp as a shattered blade. "Correct. That's the kind of position the clan head is," he stated. "It's a position where you need to stand up alone to unending threats and challenges. A position where you can never truly rely on anyone." He paused, letting the words hang like a death sentence, his great sword seemingly glowing with an eerie power. "A position that obeys the rule of the strong." Kyle's voice boomed, full of authority. "You must stand tall above everyone else with your own power," he stated. A dangerous gleam entered Kyle's eyes. "Do you believe you have the right to seize such a position?" he inquired, his tone dangerously low. "Yes," Theo answered, the word a small act of defiance against the daunting figure that was his father. Kyle's gaze narrowed, his face a mask of displeasure. "Don't answer lightly," he commanded. "I've had to slay thousands upon thousands of souls to stand here." He continued, his voice echoing with the weight of all the blood he has spilled. "Can you answer the same after feeling their resentment?" But before Theo could even answer, the air crackled with a furious energy. The voices of the slain echoed in the form of jagged, blue souls, a cacophony of rage and despair. "Kyle! Kyle! I curse thee forever!" the disembodied voices roared. "How dare you commit such a terrible atrocity?" The spectral images of those Kyle had killed appeared, their faces contorted in agony, their hatred palpable. The torrent of curses continued, growing louder and more menacing. "I will tear you apart," they threatened, their voices full of seething anger. Despite the overwhelming waves of hatred, Theo stood firm, the swirling chaos a mere backdrop to the steel in his resolve. "My resolve is unchanged," he declared. "Why is that?" he asked. Theo's response was resolute. "To avenge my past life," he stated. "To become the clan head and bring an end to the damned battle for the throne." He clenched his fists on the sword. "I am willing to overcome any challenge to achieve my mission," he said. But a flicker of doubt crossed Theo's face. "But I know that's not the kind of answer he's seeking," he noted to himself. With a swirl of his sword, Theo prepares himself, his voice ringing with steel. "I shall answer with my sword." A grin stretched across Kyle's face. It was a grin of cruel amusement, full of a dangerous anticipation. "Very well," Kyle said, his voice tinged with a hint of excitement. "I shall now treat you not as my son but as a challenger." He paused, his eyes boring into Theo. "Let's see what you've learned from her teachings." The mention of her caught Theo completely off guard, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He exclaimed, surprised. A dark thought began to grow, Did he just say her? He pondered to himself. Theo drew his blade, his face etched with a grim understanding. As I suspected, father is the one who took Lodbrok's dash. His eyes widened, as if in realization. He barely had time to react. A sharp, "Ha!" escaped his lips before the world erupted in chaos. Am I dead? Theo questioned, his vision fading. He felt detached, as if his body was no longer his own. Then a sudden, shocking eruption of power. Heart soared, as Kyle unleashed a devastating attack. Kyle's features turned from cruel amusement to almost bored. A black bird appeared, perched beside him. Huh? Are you worried that our little prodigy will die? He inquired, addressing the bird. The bird chirped twice, its glowing eyes fixed on the scene. Kyle acknowledged the bird's chirp, his gaze turning serious. You're correct, he stated. Only those with a hardened will and resolve can break out of the heart sword, he said, his voice resonating with a strange mixture of pride and doubt. Kyle's voice grew cold. It's a cruel challenge for a greenhorn in the middle of the awakening ceremony, he muttered. But if his resolve is only half-baked? His voice hardened, turning to cold calculation. It's better if he dies here as a lost soul body. He clenched his fist. I don't need a regressor who will only bring harm to the clan. The world around Theo grew dark, an oppressive blackness that seemed to seep into his very soul. I'm dead, Theo thought, his consciousness drifting. I guess that's only natural since I was cut down by father. His thoughts were detached, almost clinical, as he observed his own demise. I have no regrets, he thought, his thoughts becoming a strange mix of peace and acceptance. I've done all I can, he declared to himself. He reviewed the events of his life, as if watching a replay of past misdeeds. I stole Camellia Palace. I killed Rendon and Axion. He noted, his thoughts heavy with the crimes he had committed. Everything was just a stroke of luck. He observed, the truth of it hitting him like a physical blow. But as his life flashed before his eyes, a strange sense of calm washed over him. This was a happy life compared to my past life. He realized, his face softening in a strange, tranquil smile. That's right, he declared, his time was at an end. It's time for me to go now. His thoughts fading into nothingness. Rest peacefully. A voice echoed, distant and hollow, as his consciousness slipped further away. A final image of swirling darkness faded into nothing. A harsh, guttural voice broke through the silence, startling him. Hey now! It was loud and clear, and it didn't seem like it was intended for him. A magnificent beast appeared, a creature of shadows and light. Enough already. Get up, it commanded. If you were going to be moody like this, you should have let me devour you, stated. A single spark appeared, small but potent. It grew into a blaze, the flames licking at the edges of the darkness. You're right, thanks, Theo thought, a newfound strength coursing through his body. He felt alive again, the cold hand of death retreating before his newfound determination. I can't let this be the end, he thought, his consciousness beginning to stir. His legs moved, the ground crunching beneath his feet. I swore it to myself, he resolved to himself. He raised his head, his eyes glowing with a fierce inner light, his mind now sharp and clear. He drew his sword, a surge of power flowing through him. I may break, he thought, his body feeling stretched to its limits, but he held his ground. But I will never yield, he roared, his voice a raw challenge to the darkness. His body moved on its own, a symphony of motion and power, his sword a blur of light. The power unleashed from the attack was blinding, shattering the darkness into 1,000 pieces. Theo watched, dazed, his vision clearing. The world around him seemed to shatter. As Theo lunged forward, his sword glowing with a potent blue light, a violent resounding in the air. He had survived. Kyle lowered his gaze, his expression hard to decipher, his eyes hidden beneath his dark eyebrows. You pass, Kyle declared, the words a stark contrast to his previously cruel demeanor. He acknowledged Theo's victory, his tone still edged with pride. Theo stood, his chest heaving, his body aching. He had been pushed to the brink, and yet he had survived. 1 week later, the clan headquarters buzzed with activity, the day of the nomination ceremony at hand. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, a collective sung echoing through the grand hall. Hulkus, looking visibly uncomfortable, stood beside Erica, the two of them seemingly lost in the crowd. Ugh! There are way too many people here, he said, his voice tight with anxiety. It's making me anxious, he said, visibly shifting and fidgeting. Erica rolled her eyes, a smirk playing on her lips. How can you be so big yet so timid? She questioned, her tone teasing yet slightly fond. Hulkus bristled at her comment, his voice laced with defensiveness. I'm not timid. You're just bold, he retorted. Commanders of every unit, the 9 dragons, the former clan head, and the current clan head, his voice growing louder with every mentioned name. So many heroes are present here, he exclaimed, the words tumbling out in a rush. You're such a baby, Erica muttered. Relax already, Erica said. No one's going to be interested in someone who couldn't even obtain elemental breathing, she said, her voice mocking. What was that? Hulkus sputtered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Hulkus's face contorted in a mixture of frustration and humiliation, the corners of his mouth downturned. He felt a boo-dool in his body. He began shaking. Ha-ah! Hulkus sighed, his eyes darting around wildly. Can you just tell me already? He demanded. What was it you received from the clan head during the 3rd stage? He questioned, full of frustration and impatience. It's a secret, Erica responded coolly. Hulkus's face contorted into a mask of outrage. You're so stingy, sis, he yelled. My Theo would have been cool about it and already shared, he declared, his fists clenching in fury. Erica's brow arched at his declaration, her face a picture of bemused skepticism. My Theo? She questioned, raising an eyebrow. What are you talking about? She asked. Hulkus turned away, his expression hardening. You know that the life of a lank is to be the sword of Ragnar, he declared. We have to bet our lives on a Ragnar. He recalled the power of a dragon, a majestic creature of bone and fire, surrounded by a throng of bears. In that case, I want someone cool and strong, someone who has it all. Power, character, and ambition, he decided. And that's Theo. I want to bet my life on him, Hulkus declared, a strange light entering his eyes. That's why he's my Theo. And Theo's agreed to this? Erica questioned. Hulkus paused, his brow furrowed. Does he have to? He asked. I was just planning on joining the same unit as him. He looked off to the side, his fists tightening, his expression full of uncertainty. I don't know why, but the clan head said he's not taking Theo into the clan head's manor. He stated that his fists clenched, a determined light shining in his eyes. So I should be able to follow him, he resolved. A steady thump of his footsteps resonated in the grand hall. The resounding clang of a staff against the stone floor echoed through the courtyard. Attention, Vanna Ragnar announced, his voice booming over the crowd. He held the staff aloft. The nomination ceremony shall now commence. Overall valedictorian, Theo Ragnar, Vanna announced, a hint of forced respect in his tone. Step forward. A chorus of cheers erupted from the crowd, the energy of the place palpable. Wah-ah-ah-ah, they chanted, the sound reverberating through the building. Theo stepped into the open, the vast expanse of the headquarters sprawled out behind him. Wah-ah-ah-ah, they cheered, his features holding a strange calmness. Everyone is watching you closely, young Master Theo, a voice echoed from within the crowd. Where will you choose? The words hung in the air, a challenge, a plea. Evelyn watched from the crowd, a strange longing in her eyes. I'd like it if he would join our white-armored dragon cavalry, she mused to herself. But that's a selfish dream. Theo stood alone in the center of the courtyard. Congratulations on being the overall valedictorian, Theo Ragnar. Vanna said. Your ability to excel in every category was awe-inspiring. He continued. Now then, a sharp sound rang out, the sound of movement, and everyone turned to look. Vanna's face contorted in disbelief, his eyes wide with shock. Ed Troyven, the director of the Central Intelligence Bureau, walked into view, his eyes hidden in the shadows. Sky Dragon, director of the Central Intelligence Bureau. Ed Troyven. A chorus of confused murmuring erupted in the crowd. What the? Is he about to avenge Axion? One man questioned. No way, another said. The 9 dragons and the head of Ragnar were watching what will happen. Vanna's voice was strained. Central Director, he began. I don't know what your intentions are, but please sit back down, he commanded. Theo Ragnar, Ed's voice stated, his words resounding in the stunned silence. The Central Intelligence Bureau, Theo mused. He knew Sky Dragon. He's likely still in shock over the death of Axion. However, even he wouldn't dare to cause a commotion at the nomination ceremony. Ed Troyven offered a hand, a disarming smile playing on his lips. Would like to offer you the position of Deputy Director, he announced. Theo's eyes narrowed, his face a mask of suspicion. He didn't trust this at all.